Helmut is an architect willing to take risks, and we can all learn something from that.
Helmut's importance is international. What he's done for Chicago adds to the exceptional reputation that the city has as a place where architects have built and lived.
There's very few architects who can do everything. He's the composer, the conductor, the artist. I mean, that's why I like him so well.
Helmut reinvented this concept. After all that international style, which in the area became somehow boring, by just duplicating what already had been designed without any emotions.
He never stops being completely involved in his projects, and he's endlessly curious. That's just inspiring to me. He came to the United States from Germany as a student, went to IIT, really took on and understood how the American practice worked, and was able to have such an impact on the architectural practice in Chicago and in the United States.
The way he controls and manipulates those glass surfaces, that is this other magic that in other people's hands just doesn't look the same.
We talk on a very high level. We do not talk about regular cars, we talk about Formula One cars, if I might translate it this way. Or we talk about the best and something which is close to the best. We don't talk about average.
Helmut Jahn is daring and he's bold. He's not afraid to take architecture to the extreme, you know, and to see where it will lead.
Helmut is very forward-looking, so he's doing what Mies, would be doing were he still alive, right? Kind of looking forward, embracing the newest technologies, but at the same time, his work is about refinement.
This idea of a lifetime achievement, that Helmut should receive this award. But, in a way, I think this is a novel award. I mean, it's the beginning.
These are all great spaces. They're all great spaces to be in. That aspect of Helmut's work should be played up more. What I see in his work is someone, that's thinking about what is the great space of today.
The structure becomes architecture. The architecture becomes the structure. There's nothing which you can add. There's nothing which you can take away.
Helmut Jahn is Helmut Jahn. There's no one else like him.
Many of us in this room, and many architects and students of architecture all over the world, have read books by Professor Emeritus Franz Schulz. His definitive biographies of Mies van der Rohe and Philip Johnson are staples that have illuminated the complex lives and careers of these legendary practitioners in our field. Professor Schulz recently revisited his work on Mies and has produced a second edition of his book, co-authored by Edward Windhorst, AIA, which has just been published by the University of Chicago Press. When Franz Schulz is writing a book about you, you have more than made it. Professor Schulz's forthcoming publication, scheduled for release next month, is a critical biography of tonight's honoree, Helmut Jahn. It is a great pleasure to welcome Franz Schulz to present this year's Lifetime Achievement Award to his honored subject.
Folks, I wrote a biography of Philip Johnson, which he did not like. I wrote a biography of Mies van der Rohe, who was fortunately comfortably dead at that time. So I decided the best thing to do if you're going to write a biography of somebody, make sure he's dead. Helmut Jahn is not dead. we're going to see what happens when that book is finally published. In the meantime, I'm here to talk to you about the prepubescent Helmut Jahn. The year is 1945. Germany has been at war since 1939 and will surrender by the end of May. In the town of Allersberg, a suburb of Nuremberg, there is movement in the streets. It consists of 4 people: Helmut, his brother, his mother and his grandmother, moving as fast as they can to find a shelter because overhead a battalion of British bombers has emerged and is beginning to drop its lethal dose to the people below. They did finally get in the shelter. They found their way into the basement of a nearby house where they sat for them together with a bunch of citizens who lived nearby, waiting for the sound of the airplanes to stop. Okay, the war is over in May of 1945. What begins to happen as far as architecture is concerned in that part of the world, insofar as the Germans built anything, at that time it was pretty low budget and not particularly attractive buildings. Meanwhile, Helmut, looking around him and seeing the ruination that's been visited upon Germany as a whole, decides that this is a good profession to follow. Because having seen all those buildings demolished, he now goes into a field that depends upon people building things rather than tearing them down. So he, have you already heard earlier this evening about the fact that he went to Munich, studied at the academy, the Technische Hochschule, the technical university, spent 4 years getting his degree, his license, I should say, and then won a Rotary Fellowship that took him to Chicago. So he arrives here, I can't remember, sometime probably in the early 1940s. And as fate would have it, Mies van der Rohe was still alive at that time. And Helmut knew enough about his work to admire him very much. So before he entered IIT, where he won this fellowship, he decided to apply for a job at Mies's office. He was turned down. It's interesting to contemplate the idea of Mies van der Rohe rejecting Helmut Jahn. Not easy to remember that at all. But in any event, he finally did settle down, studied at IIT, made a point of studying with Myron Goldsmith, who was Mies's favorite student, and then goes off and becomes an architect on his own. He has met Gene Summers, Mies's trusted lieutenant. Summers had worked together with Helmut, and as a matter of fact, the 2 of them together put together this building in Kansas City, the Kemper Arena, which I understand has now been saved from apparently earlier promised demolition. Okay, so works with Summers, goes on his own, designs a number of buildings close by Chicago, including the public library of Michigan City, Indiana, and then begins to work in Germany again, where he had been before, begins to develop the kind of career which leads him to go a good deal east of Germany, to Dubai, to Doha, to the cities that now boast many of the buildings that Helmut has done. I think it's also important to remember that he finally does come back to Chicago, produces the Xerox Tower, the United Terminal at O'Hare, which I think is one of the best buildings. And it's even interesting to remember that despite his great admiration for Mies, his early work, as it goes along, moves away from the Miesian recipe. Curvilinearity replaces the straights of Mies's point of view. Color appears in his work. And as Helmut matures, his reputation matures with him. And I think it's safe to say now that the buildings he has done leading up to, let's say, the airport in Thailand, which is the second airport, he did one in Cologne, and also to the things that he has done most recently in Chicago, including the the Mansueto Library, which I think you probably know is a remarkable building insofar that all of the architecture is underground. So on that note, let me introduce you my good friend, Helmut Jahn.
Oh, the architecture is underground? I like the outside. What's the space?
Of the AIA, and thank you for this very welcome reception. I'm deeply honored, and I think this award should kind of motivate a lot of these very young people who are here tonight, who have all similar goals, and that many might achieve what I did. Also very moved by this wonderful video in St. Jeannie and Ron Crick and John Ronan and Franz for saying very poignant things about my career, which I think is wonderful in this couple of minutes to get the essence across what architecture really is about. Take chances, never look back, move forward, and solve the problems, not only of a job, but also of the world. Franz took a little bit away what I wanted to say. He didn't get always the data totally right. But when I look back at my career, I sometimes think that in preparing for an event like this, that if I could have designed it, I couldn't have done it any better. I was actually very lucky. I mean, some of the events that I went to IT, and it wasn't anything what I learned in the classes. That's why I started to work part-time. But what we learned on Saturday afternoon, when Myron Goldsmith, when Foscon, when Phyllis Lambert, when Bruce Graham, when some of the best in the business were talking about things, in a way that for a young 26-year-old person who had obviously come here because he didn't know enough to feel confident that he was going to practice architecture, that there was a belief in what architecture is about, that we had to accomplish something, that we just didn't have to build anything, not just get a job, but this was the time when the Hancock Center started under construction. Some of the other major buildings were in the work, like shortly afterwards, like the Sears Tower, the Aon building started in construction, or the Standard Oil building as it was at that time. There was just absolutely contentious discussion about what do we have to do a building like this. And when you look back on the skyline today, these are the buildings which are still the best building which have been done for a long time. And I was fortunate actually to meet in this environment Gene Summers, who left Mises' office, and then through a coincidence that McCormick Place burned down a couple of months later in early 1967. Then I moved to the office and I became his assistant, and this helped me so tremendously that sponsorship of him and the tutorship of him, and when he went in business with Phyllis Lambert, I somehow, after a little back and forth, could do some of my own buildings, like Francette, Camp Arena, which in Kansas City, which started it, and along the way, we just didn't do some important buildings, but we also had some clients. We did. There's two buildings probably stand out. If I look back, it's the United Terminal, where Dick Ferris, the chairman of United, just took a real chance, and Governor Thompson took a real chance with the Thompson Center, and everybody knows that the Thompson Center exiled us from Chicago for a while, but I wouldn't be here in this place today, I feel, because it started our trip around the world, which went then to New York and around the United States. We had a side trip, as I always call it, to Europe, and we went to Europe, and there in the mid-90s, I met Werner Sobeck, and this was another person, as he said in the video, which changed not only my life, but also changed his life, because my architecture wouldn't be the same if I wouldn't have met him, and his engineering would be not the same. And we continue to do buildings which just never accept that what we achieved in the last one is enough. And from Europe, we moved to Asia, and then to the Middle East. And looking back at those buildings, these buildings all belong in this particular place. So the Chicago buildings, classic modernism, kind of moved forward with more dynamic features. New York, the reinvention, rethinking of the American skyscraper. The European buildings, importing first the American skyscraper with the Mesotron, and then taking advantage of advanced technology, of different technical possibilities, of different demands of the users, to create buildings which are very refined and derive their aesthetic from a synthesis, not from an aesthetic, and they strive for performance and how they work. And the Bangkok airport, like the other airports, rethinking what an airport could be. And we are all struggling, like everybody, now with this total other dimension of buildings in Asia, in the Middle East, which are not 200-300 meters tall, but 400 or 500 or higher, to find an appropriate expression, to find something which makes them Chinese or Japanese or Korean or makes them appropriate for the context of the desert. This all couldn't have been done if besides those tutors and mentors, I wouldn't have great people surrounding me. Architecture is not the work of one person. Architecture is teamwork, not only architects, but engineers. And I mean, and the first person I have to actually mention is my wife, Deborah, because I knew her before I knew all these other people. And she's still with me. And she is my sharpest critic and my biggest supporter. And to all those young people, some advice. She never called me once and asked me when I was coming home. There are some people who were very important in the firm and instrumental and have left and established a career of their own, like Jim Gatch or David Hovey or Martin Wolf, and they established their own career, and they're part of what we've been doing. They're a group of people who have been from me almost in the beginning, like James Keisha, like Phil Castillo, like Steve Cook, and important to our herbsman who keeps our finances in order. The news, which isn't probably as big a news as we thought because of all the digital communication today, is that and the award had nothing to do with it, but it was a way that we decided that it should coincide with this announcement that we're changing our name. And our name is now Jahn. And there are several reasons for it. 33 years we carried the firm Murphy Jahn. I always wanted to keep the Murphy name because it established through Charles Murphy Sr. a direct linkage to Daniel Burnham, and through several mutations led to Murphy Jahn. And it was because it indicated that what our practice wanted to do is continue the Chicago tradition. Now, as we kind of moved and to become a global company, I think it's an appropriate thing to drop the Murphy name, because often I was asked, who is this Murphy? And we also dropped the Helmut, and because the name Jahn isn't really meant to be my name. The name Jahn is hopefully just becoming a brand for a dedicated and intelligent and proficient group of architects and designers working with the best engineers and consultants in the business to establish an architecture of responsibility and authenticity and clarity. And since 1999, I worked with Francisco Gonzalez Pulido, and he became my first partner. And this name also indicates that he will share the responsibility in running this firm with me, as we have done already for several years, and it will be also an indication for the younger people in the firm that there will be a transition. Naturally, there will be a transition, and he is the person who is most like me, and he is dedicated and he's committed, and he is also establishing the link from my generation, which works with the conventional tools of drawing and how to design and model a building, and mentors the young people, and he becomes the link between the past and the future. And the goal is that in this dedicated group that we are pushing the limits and exploring the future. The future in architecture is unfortunately not as bright as it used to be when I started this. But I think this is only a temporary thing. But the future is also something which just can't be imagined. The future is not just something which happens like an accident. The future is something which we got to make. And Jahn will do this, and I invite the whole architecture community to do this and to re-establish Chicago's preeminence in this field. Thank you.
Gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Rand Ekman.
So, this is a bit of a shift from the extraordinary lifetime achievement of Helmut Jahn and the body of work that has been produced over time.